Hi, Bubby.
Hi, everybody.
Hello, Bubby. Everybody's going to ask Bubby a question. Okay? Okay, so here's
Maybe I'll know an answer.
Okay, here's my first question. Bubby, did you ever hear any stories about your grandparents?
I didn't hear any stories about my grandparents, not about my father's parents, but the only story I heard about my mother's, well, I knew my grandmother, but the grandfather was in Europe, the man who went around knocking at windows, what do you call him?
He was a shamus.
Come to Davin, that was his job. But when he came here to America, he didn't do, I guess he went to shul, but I don't think he called on others to.
But he didn't live a long time after he came to America, did he?
Yes, he did. They came here in 1913, and he died just before I was born. Because I'm named for him. His name was Avram, and I'm Bracha. I don't know how that works.
I'll tell you how that worked out. Because Abraham got a blessing from Hashem that anyone that blesses him will be blessed, and anyone that curses him will be cursed. So Abraham was a blessing to the world. That's why your Hebrew name Bracha means Abraham.
Okay,
It's better than Avraham.
So there are three of us: cousin Beatty and cousin Barbara Elefishon. We were all brachas.
Very nice. You should always be a bracha. Because you're a bracha to us, Bubby. Okay, Bubby, were you poor when you were a child?
I never felt poor, but I suppose I was.
Did other people have more than you? Do you know? If your friends had more than you?
I don't know if my friends had. We were all more or less in the same boat. Let's see. My parents had a business, a fish business, so we had fish almost every night for dinner.
Salmon?
That's where it comes from.
Anything. We had smelts, we had mackerel, we had anything. And my friend Shirley, her parents had a grocery store, so I'm sure that they had what to eat. But nobody had a lot. None of us had a lot. But we didn't know we were poor. I don't remember anything about the Depression.
You don't remember?
You just heard the stories.
Suffering or not having
I had
what to
food
eat.
on the table. I had a roof over my head. Always had a roof over my head. And I had food on the table. I don't remember being deprived. If I was deprived, I didn't know I was deprived, because it's probably what everybody else was deprived. Mars wanted to buy a car. Maybe it was 1931, 32. But a beautiful green Buick with the tortoise shell trim on the window. And I remember that because Jeannie and I were climbing in the cars and out of the cars, in the cars and out of the cars, till we found the car that they wanted.
Did you need a license to drive then?
Of course.
Oh, you did need a license?
Grandpa started to drive when he was maybe 12 years old.
But he had a license? He didn't have a
He
license.
didn't have a license till later on. In 1939, we moved to Carroll Street, 1696 Carroll Street. Now, Uncle Philip and Tante Becky, Milty, Beatty, and Louise
Wait,
lived
that's
downstairs.
in what area?
Crown Heights.
Crown Heights. And we moved upstairs. Grandpa Philip, Grandma Heidi, and Jeannie and I moved in with Uncle Morris and little Bubby, my mother's mother, for sure. And that's where we lived.
So how was there room for everybody in that one apartment?
We managed. We got a day bed, pull out in one of the rooms that should have been maybe the living room. In that room we had the front bedroom, a master bedroom in the front, a small bedroom on the side. In the back we had 2 bedrooms also. There were 4 bedrooms and a pull-out bed.
And when you were a teenager, were you a Bobby Soxer?
Bobby Saxon? No.
What's a Bobby song?
I wasn't a Bobby Saxon, but we loved Frank Sinatra. In our day, we did a lot of dancing. In our house on Carroll Street, we had a big basement. Now, it was a two-family house. There were two long apartments, long. The basement was a long basement. Beatty made a lot of friends there, Milty Beatty. So all those friends and friends that we had at school came down to the basement. Margie was our friend. She was the only one. She was considered rich. She had a phonograph. All the other people had records. And they would bring it down to the basement and we would dance. And they had swirly skirts at that time. You twirled around and the skirts went round and round.
What kind of dance?
A lot of jitterbugging. We had a very nice group of friends. Now, we lived in this two-family house, and then there was a driveway, and there was another two-family house opposite us. And the landlady of the other two-family house lived downstairs, and her mother lived with her. So they would look outside when we had Saturday, and we were dancing. We were just a nice group of kids. The mother would look out and say, "Bums go!" So we all adjourned to Lincoln Terrace Park, which was across the street, down the block and across the street. And there, some of the boys and girls who didn't, well, the boys mostly, who didn't dance, they would sing and keep time, and the boys and girls would dance.
How were you affected by World War II?
I wasn't affected by much. It's just that the boys, there were no boys to come down to our basement. We made goodbye parties. We made a lot of farewell parties for those boys who left.
Did
And
they
we
get
wrote to
drafted?
them.
Were they drafted into the army? Like they got
Yes,
letters
they were
that said?
drafted. They were drafted. I don't remember anybody volunteering except Frankie Feld, who became Dr. Frank Field on television.
Did you have soldiers that you wrote to? Did you have
Yes,
friends?
of course we wrote to the boys. We wrote.
Was your food rationed?
No, meat, we had a little difficulty getting meat. A little difficulty. But we didn't eat meat much, we didn't eat much meat anyhow, because we always had fish. When we got to Carroll Street, Grandma became friends with this lady, Mrs. Sultan, from Williamsburg. And she would collect clothes and bring it, and Grandpa would drive like every once a month or something. He would drive with a full car of clothing or used, I don't know, maybe dishes, whatever she could collect. Grandma, they were always coming to the door for donations or contributions. And one of the things Grandma Ida gave money for, I proudly found out later on, was for, they had the fighting in Mila 18, the Warsaw Ghetto. The Warsaw Ghetto.
Warsaw Ghetto, wow.
So she contributed to the fighters in the Warsaw Ghetto. There was always somebody knocking at the door. When it came to Mother's Day, we would go on and give little Bubby a present. She'd say, give me nicht kein presents, don't give me any presents. Gib mir Geld. Menschen kommen, sie dürfen never haben, so ich will haben zu geben donations. So people come to the door, they knock at the door, don't give me any presents. I want money, so I should be able to give to those who come to the door.
Wow.
I used to take Grandma Ida shopping sometimes, not shop, but sometimes, very often, because Grandpa wasn't driving so well already. One time we were on Schenectady Avenue, Schenectady and Eastern Parkway, across the street from the school. And the shopping was we did a lot of shopping on Schenectady Avenue. And I was standing at a red light, and Grandma jumped out of the car, and she went running. And I didn't know what to do. I parked the car, and I waited for her to come back. I said, "Ma, where did you go?" She says, "Oh, mein Kind, this man comes to my house every Friday, and look, I'm not home." It was Friday afternoon. "I'm not home, and I bet he came to the door. And if I wouldn't have seen him, he wouldn't have had for Shabbos." So she ran over to give him money so he should have for Shabbos.
Bubby, do you remember any anti-Semitism in America that you encountered?
I did not encounter anti-Semitism that I remember at all. I lived on a street on St. Mark's Avenue where there were blacks at the other end of the block, and Jews, Italians. It wasn't in my building was not integrated, nor was the other building next to it. It was all Jews. Oh, we had one Italian family. I remember my friend Ruth Sicali. Her nice parents. Her birthday, I remember till today, is August the 14th.
Good. That's somebody else's birthday too.
Who's?
Bati.
Bati's birthday,
Yeah.
right.
Who's this Ruth Circadian person?
You and Ruth Sicali. No wonder you like spaghetti.
Pizza.
Pizza.
When we lived at 1476 St. Mark's Avenue, it belonged to my father's mother, Big Bubby. We called her Big Bubby because she was a little taller than Little Bubby.
So one was like 4'2", one was like 4'3".
No, she must have been 4'9". We stood in line to go to get one pair of stockings. It must have been, maybe it was 1942, 1943. And I stood in line, long line on Utica Avenue. I think his name was J.D. Lingerie Store. I finally got the pair of stockings. Oh, I was so proud of those stockings. And it started, every once in a while I would have a run. I would put nail polish to stop the run. But I couldn't give up that pair of stockings. I had that pair of stockings forever.
So, Mommy, you were 18 in the middle of World War II.
Right.
How was your social life?
We didn't have much of a social life. We girls went out together all the time. We celebrated each other's birthdays. We went to a nightclub. Like, I think we went to Copacabana for somebody's birthday. I don't remember whose it was. There were 5 girls who went all the time. It was Cousin Beatty, Harriet, 6 girls, Molly, Muriel, and Jeannie, and I. I don't remember going out boys and girls individually until the war was over.
There were no boys around. Hello.
Okay.
World War II.
The only ones that were there were Jobnikim, and she wouldn't
You
go
ever
out.
go,
right.
you ever go to a show?
To a Broadway show.
Broadway show, Yiddish theater.
I remember Yiddish theater. I went very often to Yiddish theater because Grandma Heidi liked Yiddish theater. So we went very often. And you know what? And Jeannie and I went. Grandma Heidi got a seat, and for nickel each, and Jeannie and I were able to sit down on the steps next to Grandma Heidi, and we saw the shows. And we would go out. We knew the words to all the songs.
Today they wouldn't let you do that. They'd say it was a fire hazard.
Right, that's today. But in those days, we sat. My mother had the end seat, and then Jeannie and I sat on the step next to my mother. I went to the Roland Theater on Eastern Parkway and East New York Avenue, and the Hopkinson Theater on Hopkinson Avenue between Pitkin and Sutter.
Did Uncle Morris live with Grandma and Grandpa in Brooklyn also?
It was Uncle Morris's house. Grandma and Grandpa didn't have money. It was
They
Uncle
lived with
Morris.
him.
They lived with him, that's right.
He was very kind. You want to talk about him for a minute?
Uncle Morris was very good to the family. He treated Aunt Jeannie and me like we were his own children. And he loved Grandma Heidi also. He was a very good son to little Bubby. He was a good brother to Uncle Alex and to Uncle Joe. And he was a tough guy. To us, he was a softie.
Yeah, I remember him only as being the most wonderful person. I named my son after him. He had to be a great person. He works very hard.
He was a good businessman. He was an astute businessman. See, Uncle Philip and Uncle Alex were wonderful tailors. They were wonderful tailors. And they went into that business. But Uncle Morris wasn't such a good tailor, so he painted. He did some painting, house painting, and saved up enough money to buy a 6-family house. And then he bought a bigger house, 8-family house. In the meantime, Uncle Alex saved every penny he had and walked to work, walked across the bridge from where he lived so he could save that nickel car fare. And eventually, and he didn't take lunch, he took a roll for lunch. That was his lunch. I don't know where he lived at the time. I think he lived with Uncle Morris probably, I don't know. But they saved enough money to bring over the parents, little Bubby and the grandpa that I never knew, Uncle John, Uncle Julius, Uncle Joe, and Grandma Heidi. And they came to America, and they provided a home for them in the little house that they lived in, the 6-family house.
Yeah.
And little by little, he went into real estate. Uncle Alex did the bookkeeping. Uncle Alex went to school at night, and he learned English, he learned mathematics. He was very good at math. Uncle Morris, on the other hand, had no patience for that. He never learned to write. He signed his name very well, but he couldn't write checks out. Somebody wrote the check out for him and he signed it. He couldn't write leases. As a little girl, I don't know, maybe I was 9 years old, 10 years old, I used to write the leases for the tenants already. Uncle Morris was married to this lovely woman, beautiful woman. They were married for a short time. They lived in an apartment in his building on Buffalo Avenue, which he lost during the Depression. She was afraid of getting heavy, so she would eat and run to the bathroom and throw up.
She was bulimic.
She died of malnutrition. Her name was Katie. No, he never married again.
Yeah. But he sort of adopted your mother's family. That became his family.
You know what? Grandma Heidi was wonderful, and we were very good children.
Bubby, what's your most memorable trip that you ever went on with Grandpa Zevnata?
We always wanted to go someplace exciting, but Grandma Bessie and Grandpa Izzy used to say, when our kids were small, we stayed home. So we had no, Grandma Heidi was always working. There was nobody to babysit for the children for more than a few hours or an evening. So we didn't go anyplace, but we were quite content.
Wait, so you said there were 2 times in your life that you felt your life was threatened. The first time was when you got swept away by a wave.
I was caught in the undertow. I kept going round and round.
Oh, and the second one was, I missed it on this thing. And the second one was when you had an allergic reaction and you couldn't
I was
breathe.
going to die.
Right. So that's why we had to go away every summer without you?
Yes.
But I missed you and I hated going away in the summer without you.
I came up with Daddy on the weekend.
So why couldn't I stay in Brooklyn? Why did I have to go to the country?
I thought I was doing you a favor.
You weren't doing me a favor. I was so sad. I cried every single day. No, it was terrible. I hated it.
I'm sorry you never told me.
Okay, so now I'm telling you.
That's
You-
So now you have to make up for it. So now you have to stay for longer.
When I got married, I lived on Empire Boulevard between Kingston and Albany. And Uncle Avi went to junior high school. And one day, I went to pick him up. It was Friday afternoon. They always dressed nicely. They wore nice black pants and a white shirt and nice shoes, Shabbos shoes. Every day he went to school like that. But after school, they were going to have a basketball game or something. So he asked me to please pick him up and take him home quickly so he could put on his sneakers and take a glass of milk and cake and go play basketball. And I went to the school, and I couldn't get to the school because there were police cars surrounding the school. I said, what happened? And the boys from Pigtown.
What's Pigtown?
Italian
Pigtown was
gang.
the Italian area.
It was West Side Story. We
Oh my
had
gosh.
Down with Italiana,
Ay,
and the Egyptian lords were the Spanish.
ay, ay, that's so scary.
Switchblades, zip guns.
Whoa.
So I said, uh-oh, not happy here. One day,
She's being kind. She's not saying that I was not the best behaved children.
one day he came home from school and the police called me. We were living on Empire Boulevard. That's it. We're leaving. So we went looking for a home out on the island. We hadn't gone before because I didn't drive. By now I learned how to drive. And,
I went with you for your driving lessons.
yes,
I sat in
we
the
had
back of your car.
Sat in the back of the car, right. So we moved to Long Island. We were looking for areas, and it had to be convenient so that it shouldn't be too far from Brooklyn and shouldn't be too far for Grandpa to be able to take the train to the city. We didn't want to go all the way out where he would have to take a train and ride for hours, and couldn't be too far. So I wanted to be able to get to Brooklyn, to my parents. So we found, one year when we were up in the country, we met this couple and two more couples. Honey and Louis Liebling lived on Hillcrest Place in North Woodmere. Once we went to visit them, we said, this is so close to Brooklyn, and it's not far from the train, and everything would be convenient. So we went looking for houses there, and we found this house, and we liked it very much. We lived next door to Elaine and Paul Conrad, and Elaine and Paul were the presidents of Ortora. Ortora wasn't a shul then, it was a little house that was next door to Rabbi Rebbetzin. So Elaine invited me to a luncheon, or just to meet and greet Rebbetzin. But before that, she had a board meeting in her house, and I met Pauline Shale. And I knew Pauline Shale from Thomas Jefferson. I said, I feel very much at home here. I know some of the girls already. So I joined Congregation Ortora.
You're an inspiration to us all. We're sitting here, 4 generations of children that come, and you are the matriarch, and could have
I'm
been
very
5
flattered.
had Grandma Heidi been around. At a certain point in time, tragedy struck, and you, at a very young age, had 3 children that you had
36
to,
years old.
at age 36, that you had to bring up. You were light, always a smile. How did you manage to cope with?
I was very fortunate that I had a very wonderful family. My mother's side and my husband's side. Everybody was very good to us. And they were concerned about us and cared for us. And the neighbors in town were very nice to us. So first I thought maybe I should move and go near my family in Brooklyn. But the kids had made some friends here. They were in school. They were happy where they were. I loved my house. And so I managed.
But you never seemed depressed, Mommy. And like it must have been very depressing. Like I only have memories of having such a happy childhood. So how did you do that?
I was happy that I had this family to take care of, to keep me going. It was very important to me. My children were very important to me. My parents were very important to me. My extended family was very important to me. And I made a place for myself in the community.
Mommy, how about some highlights of the children growing up that you recall?
Okay? I remember walking the street with my son. And he was the cutest. And wherever I would walk, people would stop. Oh, he's so adorable. They would pinch his cheeks. Oh, he's so adorable. What's his name? And then along came Ginny. She was the best of my 3 children, I must tell you.
Best in terms of?
She didn't cry a lot. She went to sleep without my having to much her. She was just a very good child. For you, it was impossible to put you to sleep. Well, it's not even your fault entirely. But Izzy and Grandma Bessie came every single night. Every single night. They lived about 4 blocks away. So they came to the houses of their first grandchild. And they were all excited. And they played with you, and they played with you, and they played with you, and they played with you. Then they went home. Which was around 11 o'clock.
Got you all hyped up.
Now it's time to put you to sleep. So you didn't just go, so you were continuing to play. So Daddy used to put you guys on and give you a bucket, and he'd rock you and rock you and rock you and rock you until finally you fell asleep. And you came along, and you were cute as could be, but you never wanted to sleep. You slept all day, and you were up all night. In those
Things
days,
don't change.
in those days, I played mahjong with Cousin Beatty, Harriet, and her sister-in-law. Once a week, twice a week. But when you were born, you just wouldn't sleep at night. So I gave up mahjong. I said, I'm not going to give up this child.
I think we all turned out okay, Baruch Hashem.
Thank God.
Yeah,
I'm very proud of the result.
Baruch Hashem.
And I just pray that God should watch over all of you.
Amen.
Is there anything that
safe
you
and
haven't
well.
done in life that you regret that you haven't done?
Now I have a reason.
I never regret anything that I didn't do. The most important thing to me is my children and my grandchildren, and nothing else counts as far
And
as
you don't care about your great-grandchildren?
my Yes, I'll include them also.
But let me ask you something. Isn't it fun to have great-grandchildren?
Does she?
It's the most fun.
You see that?
Most fun. I watch my children and my grandchildren enjoying their children. When I was young, and they would talk about the year 2000. 2000. Who would? Oh who could believe it? Somebody would live to the year 2000. But thank God,
Baruch
here it
Hashem.
is. And I'm very grateful to God that He lets me come and go.
Baruch Hashem. We are also grateful.
And I see the accomplishments of my grandchildren. And I'm so proud of them.
Baruch Hashem.
Each one in their own way.
Amen.